Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. The first offering of the platform is a public speaking course called Teach the Geek to Speak. To learn more about it, you can go to teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is LaShanya Aikerson, and she's an expert in change management and the owner of her own consultancy firm. I've heard the term change management before. I studied for the PMP a number of years ago, but even though I did that,
I know how that goes.
it'd be great to get a refresher about what change management actually is. So I'm glad to be speaking with LaShanya today. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, LaShanya.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, first, before we get the whole change management thing, I saw that from the big research I did on you that your undergraduate degree is in electrical engineering. What was the motivation to get that degree?
You know, I was born to a mom who taught math since before she got pregnant with me. So I was doing 1 + 1 in the womb. So I knew I was going to major in something that had a high concentration of math. And of all of those options, electrical engineering stood out to me as being the best option, not only for my interests and what I felt I was naturally good at, but also in terms of longevity and where I saw, the world going. At the time, computers, personal computers and things like that were kind of cutting edge, and the internet was like this thing that you can go to the lab and log on. So I just felt that electrical would be my best option for my future.
All right. But I also saw that you got an MBA as well. So what was the motivation to get the MBA?
So I went from learning how to do Geek to learning how to be able to speak and talk to the regular people. And for me, that actually was a big thing, because when I started out in electrical engineering, my plan was to get my master's, my PhD, like I was going to do electrical engineering all the way. And along the path, I realized that what it meant to be an engineer and what really excited me were not congruent. And I realized that I was a little bit too nosy. Where I worked at the time, it was, okay, do what we tell you, stay in your little corner of the world. And I'm like, but I want to find out what's going on. I want to know what's happening before I read about it, in the news or see it on TV. I was a little bit too nosy. And then for me, because I was so good technically, I kept getting promoted, which was great at the time. But eventually you get promoted to a point where you're supervising people and you're not being technical. And once those promotions happen, I realized that maybe my people skills in dealing with the humans isn't so great. So hence going and studying things that were more on the business side and working with people versus just the electrical side. And quite frankly, I was so bad at first that I got fired. So I went from being the best engineer that I got the promotion to being fired because I didn't do the skills that got me the promotion were not the same skills I needed to keep the promotion.
Wow, that's crazy. I know you said that over time you would get promoted and eventually you had to manage, but you got promoted to positions in which managing people was required. Was there ever an option to be promoted and still just remain technical and not have to manage people?
That option wasn't available to me at that time. No. To move up, eventually you supervise. That was it.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I guess. And then and also even the progression, those promotions and eventually managing people, is that something you wanted to do, or was it kind of something that the company said, we would really like you to do?
It's funny. I really wasn't all that keen on the working with the people part. I wanted the promotions. I wanted the promotions. I wanted the money that came with the promotions. I wanted the prestige. So I really wanted those promotions. I wasn't like, no, don't promote me. I was like, bring it on. I was aggressively seeking out. I mean, I wanted to run things. And I let people know, I'm trying to move up in this place. And yeah, I did move up, and that was the problem.
Yeah, it was a problem. Well, it wasn't a problem for your bank account. I'm sure your bank account liked it quite a bit, but but yeah, but I guess
Exactly.
you get, but then when you get let go, then and then the bank account ain't so happy no more. So, but once that did happen, what did you do?
So for me, it's funny. I had a mentor, and he said to me, he said, LaShanya, there are two types of people. There's the type of person who can hold down a job, and then there's you. And so what I decided to do was and I kept saying, they want me to be able to talk to people. And, I picked engineering on purpose. I thought I could avoid the humans, and here they are. And I'm like, I don't know how to do that. And he said, that's what you think. You can either learn how, like the rest of the world, or you can say, I just don't know, stay stuck, stay unemployed, and he said, I don't know about you, but I kind of like making money, you know? And so that's really what did it. And I realized that I had to learn, and that what separated those who could, work with people and so forth from, the engineer that I was at the beginning of my career. I started out, I was just very technical. I didn't have to deal with a lot of people. I did my job well, on time, and everyone was happy. And so I realized that I really had to develop this skill. And what I didn't know was coming was even the people who thought they could stay technical in their little cubby holes were being asked to do things like present at meetings what they're working on. And, so even if I hadn't done the get promoted as quickly as possible path, I still would have been asked to come out and talk to people. So it was inevitable.
Yeah, I remember working at a startup, and I was kind of like you. I just wanted to do my job and then, go home and then come back the next day and do the same thing. I wasn't too interested in talking to people. But at this startup, it was pretty small. So every Friday at lunch, everybody would go out to eat. And I never wanted to go.
Like, do I have to?
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Do I have to go? And it actually ended up being kind of an issue with my boss, because he'd say that, there are people that have been working at this company less time than you, and we know them better than we know you. And I remember thinking at the time, like, yeah, that's on purpose. You people know what I need you to know. I'm like, yo, you know what you need to know about me. You know what I'm saying? You ain't know all my business. That's how it was. So yeah, I guess I was one of those types that was kind of shying away from those type of, I guess, social type of interactions, and just talking to people. I thought just doing my job would be good enough, but especially in this day and age, I guess we both know, and hopefully others listening in know, that no, that's not good enough. Especially, you got to be able to talk about, just like you said, the people that come out of their cubby hole, they got to come out of their cubicles. You got to talk about the things that you're working on, because frankly, who the hell else is supposed to talk about them? You know them the best.
Exactly.
Like, you can avoid it for as long as you can, but eventually you can. You got to get out there, and you got to do it. So
yes.
So okay, so you were fired from this job. You're a mentor that said you better learn how to speak to these people, or else you're going to stay unemployed. So did you end up going out and getting another job, or did you go into consulting right away?
So it's funny, because he actually paid for me to learn. And he said, you're hard-headed. I want you to take training, because there are people who can actually kind of show you a few things, and you're not seeking that out. So I took training, and the next job I had, that was when I started to go into consulting. And when I went into consulting, the whole point of consulting is dealing with clients. All they do is send you off on client engagements to talk to the client, to make sure the client is happy with your work. It's just a big talk to people situation. And then in between the talking to the people, oh yeah, you get to do some work. And so for me, I was so happy that I took the time to kind of start that learning process. And then once I was there, I felt comfortable enough, because here's what I noticed. When you know you don't know, you avoid. And so initially I was avoiding people. I mean, I could find places to hide in a building with no hiding spots. But then when I felt confident that I know how to talk to these people, I mean, I don't have to be an extrovert to know how to, keep a job. And so I knew I could talk to these people. And so I'd walk into the room, hello. And the old me would have been like, oh, wow, that was you. And so when I had that confidence, I walked in, and here's the upside. Being as analytical and technical, we have a tendency to know our stuff. It'd be out of character for me to just say, I'm going to just wing it. No, I'm going to study. I'm going to analyze. I'm going to know what I need to know. And so because of that level of competence, that fed my confidence. And so I could walk in and I knew I was ready for the Q&A. In fact, some of those other people that were consultants with me that didn't have the kind of geeky background that I did, they were like, oh, I don't know how to answer some of those questions. And I was like, step aside. Watch and learn.
LaShanya, this is kind of nuts, because you went from somebody who was fired for not communicating with people to a job that required you to communicate with people. Was that something like you kind of threw yourself in the deep end because you knew you'd have to confront this, I guess, this thing that you'd avoided for all this time, or was it just coincidence?
I threw myself in the deep end. And here's the thing. Here's what I came to realize. I had to decide, what do I want? Do I want to stay small, or do I want to live the biggest, best life possible? And my commitment to me living the best life I knew how involved throwing myself in the deep end. There was no way I was going to get to the life that I truly wanted for myself if I didn't do that.
Yeah, no question. So, I mentioned in the intro that you're an expert in change management. And I mentioned also that I'm supposed to know what change management is. But for everybody else who's watching or listening, can you give a definition of what change management is, and why do companies invest in it?
So change management, and the type of change management that I do, it's helping on the people side. So I help people adapt to change. So when change management is needed, it's because the organization has made a decision that something's going to change. Maybe we're going to go through an ERP. Maybe we're going to upgrade, this platform, or we bought this new technology that the legacy, applications don't even talk to, and we've got to, get everyone on board with this new way. So I address the people side. So by definition, when I show up, people are naturally resistant to change. So when I show up, I'm there to make you very uncomfortable. So I walk in with my big smile and they're like, oh, here she comes. And so, but it's really about getting people to adapt to the change, to do the new behavior, and not just once, because when you don't do change management, an organization, because here's what I used to do. Before I got fired, what I would say is, we're going to use this new system starting on Monday. Thank you very much. Oh, whoa, LaShanya, how do I log in? Wait, I got questions. Like, when do I use it? What do I do? Oh, yeah, I don't have time for that. I told you to use it. Like, what? It didn't work? And so change management is making sure that people are supported in that emotional and know-how journey so that they can be successful. So not only are they successful, the organization is successful, and the change will stick versus be temporary. In other words, as soon as nobody's looking, hey, let's go back. I still got my login,
How do you deal with people who are resistant to change?
Excellent. So one of the first things that I do is I assess the level of change resistance, because it's never zero. And so as soon as in fact, if they tell me, oh yeah, everyone's all excited and they're all happy, I'm like, they lied to you. And so I go in and I really assess the level of resistance. I assess where my pockets of resistance are, where my pockets of, those champions and advocates are. And so what I try to do early on is I identify what I call change champions. And these are people with high social capital, not necessarily high on the org chart. They're the people who everyone can say, I've worked with this guy for years, I trust him. And they're also more social. And so they're the ones that if I say, hey, tell me about the team. Okay, well, so-and-so's got a daughter that's graduating from college, and this person, you know, like they know the people as humans as opposed to, I know him because he sits 2 seats away, you know. And so I pick the people with higher levels of social capital, and I give them a little bird's eye view behind the scenes. It's like, hey, the changes, they decided this was happening before I got here. So we're in this thing. It's happening. And so I want you to help me by seeing what's coming ahead of time, by playing an extra active role. And so give them power to help with some of, you know, maybe we got to decide who goes first, or maybe we get to decide, you know, are we going to implement this feature, or maybe leave it turned off initially and roll that out later. Or, you know, some of the nuances, they can play a role in some of those decisions. And also because they saw behind the curtain what it looks like in the future state, they can go back to Johnny that they work with and say, I saw what it looks like. It's actually really good. And so everyone else is like, oh, I trust Johnny. If he says it's good, then it's got to be good. Versus Johnny come back and say, yeah, I don't know about this. Yeah, I don't know either. You know, and so find those people that can play that active role. And, you know, but the bottom line is the number one way to overcome change resistance is top-down support. So if I go to an organization and leadership is like, I'm not willing to be a visible advocate for this change, I'm like, oh, hey, I mean, I don't know how to help that. You need to at least admit that you want this to happen.
So when you find the person that people trust, you have to make sure that they're actually on board with the change too. Because what do you ever run into instances where you find the people that people trust, but they're not on board with the change?
Oh, absolutely, every time. And so the key is to find out why. And I sit down and I ask. Sometimes they'll say, LaShanya, I'm really good at the old way. I know it's not perfect. I know you got to like stand on one leg and jump up and down to get it to work, but I know which leg to jump on. You know, like I got it down to a science. This new way, kind of foreign. And quite frankly, I don't see the benefits. And so now we're going to sit down and say, okay, well, clearly the benefits haven't been communicated, because no organization decides to do a major change if there's no upside. You know, that's just, companies don't do that. There's some upside in there that is the reason for the decision. And so I make sure that the benefits are clear, articulated in the language of those impacted, not in the language of some higher up person that maybe never did the job, but in the language of those who are impacted. And I just ask a lot of questions like, well, what about this do you find most challenging? It's like, well, at first I was just against it just because. But now that you're asking me to be specific, you know, well, you know, maybe it's not so bad. And you know, and so I really ask them questions. And here's the thing, it's complete transparency. You know, I'm not going to promise you something that it's not going to deliver. I want you to, when you say you support it, it's from the heart. It's not some made up, you know, they told me to say this and gave me some script. No, because you're going to have to live with it. And you're going to live with it when I'm gone. You know, I'm here to do an engagement. I'm going to train. I'm going to support you. And then I'm going to be working with another client and you're going to be here living with it. So I want to make sure that when you say you believe in this and you can support the change, that you mean it. And if you have any reservations, not only now, but in the future, let's dig into that and find a mitigation strategy, do something. But we're not going to just sit there and say, oh yeah, it's horrible. No, we're going to address that. And we're going to make sure that when you say you're behind it, you mean it.
Yeah, no question. I mean, you did say that companies don't implement these changes unless there's an upside. Have you ever run into instances where the upside is for the company, but not necessarily the employees?
So let me say this. Usually those making the decision are not the people who are doing the day-to-day work in the system. And so, you know, regardless, I mean, I'm using technology changes. Sometimes the changes are, you know, changing our whole IT structure, you know, organizationally. So regardless of the change, usually the people that are making the decision are not the ones who are the directly impacted group. So sure, their bias is from their vantage point. We can only see from whence we're standing. We can't put ourselves from another perspective that we've never stepped into. And so sure, does that happen? Oh, absolutely. And yet, and still, I can find benefits for those that are impacted. I am like I got a strong sniffer for benefit identification.
Right.
And not just generally speaking, but no, really, I want to understand a day in the life for you. I want to understand what it was like in the current environment, and I want to contrast that to what's coming. And so I roll up my sleeves and I get down into it, and I find those upsides.
Yeah, and I mean, one of the major upsides is you don't have to jump up on one leg no more. You can keep both your legs on the ground.
Exactly. And here's the thing. I mean, when you're in technology is going to evolve. That's just, I mean, that's the given. So anyone who thinks that we're going to use some legacy application until, the end of time, I mean, I don't care how good anything is. Things are going to change. The change happening is the for certain. That you can count on. And I'll tell people, even though we're going through this change right now, in a few years, this is going to be obsolete. Something new that we don't know about yet is going to come, and that's going to be it. It's going to be the new thing.
Yeah. And then I'll be back here again.
Exactly.
Learn this face really well. You'll see me in a few years.
Yes.
So obviously, in your job, you have to talk to people. You have to address groups. Do you ever get nervous doing so? And if so, how do you deal with your nerves?
So I still get a little bit nervous, and not the type of nervous that I had at the beginning. At the beginning, I was afraid I didn't want to look stupid. And I think we all have our own different fears, but my fear was, I'm going to put my foot in my mouth. I'm going to say something that's off, or, I meant to say this, but what came out of my mouth was that. And so I was afraid of looking stupid, or getting a question that I didn't know the answer to. And here's what I've learned. So on the questions I don't know the answer to, if I get a question I don't know, I say, great question, I don't know. Poof! I haven't spontaneously combusted. I've never been shot, I don't know.
Like, how dare you not know?
Right. I'm like, hey, good question. I don't know that one. Now, if it's a scenario where I can follow up and get back to people, if it's something where I can get the answer, I'll say, let me follow up. And sometimes it's something that I don't know and I won't know. I just say, I don't know. Next question, And so, and as far as the fear of looking stupid or making a fool out of myself and all those things I used to have, now I've just decided that those no longer plague me. And let me tell you an experience that I had early on in speaking. When I, first started my business, one of the things that my coach suggested I do is go to this particular speaking opportunity where there are going to be a lot of speakers. Each speaker would go up, say their thing, and while they were going off the stage, the next speaker would come up. And so everyone got about 30 minutes, and it's kind of a thing where the participants could get a lot of information from a lot of different people. And I was so into the person who spoke before me that I didn't realize, as I was walking on this metal waffle stage, that my heel was getting caught in between the waffles. And so here I am taking my next step. I fell face forward right onto the little waffle things, like right on stage. Like it wasn't like they couldn't see me because I was up. As I fell, I had on one of those little kind of skirts that literally flew up while I was falling. I was in my most embarrassed moment ever. And I tried to turn invisible. I don't know how to do that. And I decided, so I had two options. I could either run for dear life or I could continue. And I said, you know what? I'm not going out like that. I know I feel horrible, but I'm going to do this thing. And I went to the mic. I said, I shared a little bit more than I had planned, but, people started laughing. And I just went on with what I had to say. Now, when it was over, I ran back to my seat like a track star. I'm like, if I got to jump out my shoes, I don't care what, I am not getting caught up on the exit.
Right.
And I was so, I mean, even after all that, I was so scared because I was like, man, I totally embarrassed myself. And people came up to me and they were like, LaShanya, you're the most memorable one. You know, we need someone to help us at our company. I ended up getting business from the thing that was supposed to be my most embarrassing, more than I probably would have had I done everything perfectly. And so now I'm like, you know what? My new thing is I am on the be vulnerable. I'm going to go out there and give my all. And, you know, I've even had people, I've even said, ask me anything. Because if I'm there to empower you, I don't mind sharing how I stumbled before I was able to learn. And so I've shared with people some embarrassing things that had I not told them, they weren't there. They didn't have to know. And I'm over that be embarrassing because every time I do something that I think is embarrassing, good comes 100% every time. And so I just go out there and I know if I feel really shaky, like, oh, I'm like, something good's coming. Something good's coming. That's all I know. And
Yeah.
and I just go for it. So yeah, so I'm over that now. And I'm not saying that I don't make mistakes or have, you know, things that I would consider a little on the embarrassing side. I just keep it moving.
No question. And you know, if all else fails, you feel a little nervous, just fall down again. Can't get
No
worse than
more
that.
poofy skirts ever.
No, man. Pants from now on. No. Pantsuit all day. So another thing I wanted to ask is, when it comes to the presentations that you do you have a process for putting them together? And if so, what is it?
So I have a process that I started with, and I have a process that I've evolved to. At the very beginning, I had to be really clear and have a really solid outline and not a script, because for me, you know, trying to memorize, that's like the kiss of death. And so just an outline, you know, how am I going to start? What are my main points? How am I going to end? You know, all of that. And that allows me to stay on time, because anytime you're speaking, the number one thing is don't go over time.
No question.
You know, so that allows me to be fluid, because things might happen. Maybe I was supposed to start at a certain time and it's actually 10 minutes in because of circumstances beyond my control before I actually can go, or, you know, whatever. I always end on the time that I committed to, even if that means an adjustment. And so so that's how I started. Now I kind of, instead of having it that scripted, because I know my material so well and I have a style that's very audience adaptive, now I just make sure I know in my head, what do I want to emphasize today? And so, and because I have a tendency to talk about certain things, you know, I have my 5 distinctions of leadership around change management and emotional intelligence and team building and communication skills and continued inspiration. Because I know that I have certain things that are my core, that are my brand identity, that are my topics that are most in demand. I have a tendency, you know, I know my stuff, and I just decide, where do I want to emphasize with this audience? And and I feel out the audience. I like to ask a question early on that gives me a little bit of a pulse check. And based on how that goes, I know if I want to focus a little bit here, a little bit here. And so I'm a little bit more fluid. I consider my style to be one where I try to feel the audience while I'm talking throughout the whole presentation. So I might suddenly say, you know what, I feel like I'm starting to lose people. You know, I got to do something that brings them up, where they got to respond, like an audience response thing. Even though that wasn't, quote unquote, in some script, I got to do it right now. Or I might decide, let me throw out a question and do another pulse check, because I can't quite gauge where they're at on this. And so I have a little bit more fluid, but it's because I'm really passionate about the way in which I make a difference. For me, I don't speak to convey information. Initially, that's what I would speak about. It was, I want to dazzle you with my knowledge and give you all the data points for whatever that topic is. Now I want to transform your life. And I don't just want to transform your life in a work context. I want you to be transformed in a whole life context, at home, at your church, in your community. And so I want to leave you with tools that you can use everywhere. And so in order for me to have a transformation experience, especially if I only have a short period of time to work with, I got to connect with where you're at. And I've got to ask a few questions, and I got to go deep quick. I don't have time to do the light, like, no, okay, here it is. And so I'm very authentic, very vulnerable, very direct, and, you know, none of the fluffy. I go right to it because, hey, this is all the time we got. And this moment, once it's over, I'm not going to get it back. So I either give you 100% now or I live in regret. I'm going to give the 100%. And so, because I want you to leave a different person. And most people, they think, oh, we got somebody who's coming to speak. Yay, let me sit back, get comfortable. And they're like, whoa, I got to buckle up for this one. You know, it's like, no, really, if you thought I was just another speaker, you got another thing coming.
That's
Let
crazy.
me dispel that myth very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, the progression of not wanting to speak to people to what you're doing now is quite impressive. Is there anything else that you'd like to add about things that you're working on, LaShanya?
Just to say that, you know, for me, I am very much a speaker, trainer, coach, and meeting facilitator. And so, you know, people who really want to improve and take their life to the next level, I'm living proof that it can be done. I went from avoiding people, hiding out at work, trying to find ways that no one could find me, the secret conference rooms or things where, you know, they couldn't get to me, to seeking people out. And so I know that if I can do it, you can do it. And I'll just say that step one is to get clear on what you want. What are your goals for you? No one can tell you what you should be. Kind of when you grow up, who is that person you want to be? And so commit to it and do what it takes to get there, and don't let anything stop you, especially fear. And if I can support you in that, hey, reach out to me. I'm very committed to what I do. And this is, I don't just do it as this is a good business to start. This is me. So till my last breath, this is me.
Wonderful. How can people get in touch with you?
So my website is aikersonconsulting.com. So that's AIKERSON consulting.com. You can email me at info@aikersonconsulting.com. And I'm on all social media. There's no one else named LaShanya Aikerson. So LaShanya Aikerson.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson, founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. Consider checking out Teach the Geek to Speak. It's an online public speaking course, and you can learn more about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, LaShanya.
Thank you.